Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. Well, nothing says Happy Valentine's Day to me like O.J. Simpson. That's love is in the air when I think of him. Yep, because he sure loved football and rental cars and comedy movies, which were actually very funny. And if you haven't seen Airplane, go watch Airplane. It's very, 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 very funny, but I know that you've all seen it. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope it's a good day for everybody. And golf clubs. You're right, John. I can't remember who this guy is on the stand. Is he Does he work at the restaurant? I can't remember. But we're going to try to get a good chunk of OJ done today. 2 videos.
Where did you go when you came upstairs at 11 o'clock?
I got in bed.
He's the
And
neighbor.
when you got in bed, was the dog still barking?
We're still with the dogs barking. That's where we're at.
Yes, he was.
What did you do at that point?
I was reading for a little while. I I mentioned to my wife that I was concerned about the dog. Our own dog was on the bed, and he was reacting to the
Donald.
barking
Good luck.
by growling a little bit. And I think I went back and took another look through the shutters, and I noticed the line of windows at the residence, and there was a light on, and I assumed that somebody was home, and there were a lot of units, as you can see from the map, that were closer to the sound, so I thought somebody may have already done something about it.
So you felt that there might have been something wrong, but someone else may have reported it already?
It was hard to interpret what was going on. The dog didn't sound as if it was in pain or anything like that. It just sounded, as I said, unhappy.
And when you got up to go to the shutters in your master bedroom, you went to look in the direction of where the barking seemed to be coming from.
Yes, that is correct.
And where did you look?
No one prepared me that there would be an unhappy dog in this. This is too horrible. This is horrible.
I looked directly toward the condominium in question, and I noticed the row of lights, as I mentioned, and then I went back to bed.
So, and when you say the condominium in question, is that the one depicted in this photograph, which I'd ask be marked Peoples 39?
Yes, that is correct.
And when you went to look in that direction, you were looking there because it was where the dog barking seemed to be coming from?
Staying, leading.
Why did you look in that direction?
I looked in that direction because that's where the barking sound was coming from.
Did you go to sleep
Excellent,
immediately at 11
Donald.
o'clock?
No, I read for a while, and I can't tell you how long I read, but obviously sometime before, within the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I fell asleep.
When you fell asleep, could you still hear the dog barking?
I think I may have heard it sporadically, but I was basically trying to focus on what I was reading, and I can't answer that question.
Do you recall hearing it still barking while you were reading?
Yes, for a portion of the time I did hear it initially.
When you first heard the dog barking, after a few minutes, you said you went downstairs?
Yes, that's correct.
And when you came back upstairs, you could still hear it barking?
Yes, but of course there was that period of 30 to 40 minutes when I was away from the master bedroom, and I can't tell you whether it was barking continually.
Because you were in that office that's pretty soundproof, right?
That's correct.
When you came back up, though, and you heard the barking, did it sound like the same dog?
Yes, it was definitely the same dog.
And when you went into your bedroom and got into bed at about 11 o'clock and you could still hear the barking, was that still the same dog?
Yes, it was.
And it was one dog barking?
It was one dog barking distinctively, and if there were other dogs barking, I certainly didn't hear them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon, Mr. Fenves.
That's an
Directing your attention.
I was going to stop the clock. It's 7 a.m. where I am. Let's guess real quick how long it takes him to ask this man about the dogs barking. I'm going to go with 20 minutes. I'm going to go with he has 20 solid minutes of questions about a dog barking. Here we go.
Attention back to the date of June 12th, 1994, in the evening hours. That was a Sunday evening, was it not, sir?
That is correct, sir.
And you were at home at your residence on Gretna Green, is that correct?
That is correct.
And as I understand your testimony, the 800 block of Gretna Green, you have a vantage point where if you look down this alley, south down the alley, you see the northernmost portion of the residence there on Bundy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, at the time, on June 12, 1994, you did not know who lived at this particular residence.
No, I did not.
And on that particular evening, so you didn't know it was Nicole Brown Simpson or anyone else at that point, did you?
No, I did not.
All right. And on that evening, as I understand your testimony, you were watching what you believe to be the Channel 5 news at 10 o'clock. Is that right?
That is right.
And you had occasion, did you not, to speak with some members of the Los Angeles Police Department, to wit, officers Tippin, T-I-P-P-I-N, and Carr, C-A-R-R, along with your wife, whose name is it Jay or Jai?
Jay.
Jay Fenves, about 9:10 in the morning on June 13th. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
And when you first talked to these police officers, the events from the night before were fairly fresh in your mind. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And of course, in addressing and talking to the police officers, you told them the truth about everything as best you knew, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's true, is it not, that you told the police officers that it was at about between 10:15 and 10:30 p.m. that you and your wife heard a dog barking uncontrollably to the rear of your residence. Is that the way you phrased it to the police officers?
No, first of all, I do not remember telling them 10:15 to 10:30. I remember telling them 10:15 to 10:20.
All right, let me stop you right there. Let me, you and I'd like to approach him with a statement form and have him take a look at it. And I want to have him read something. Counsel, this is page 100369.
All right, you may approach.
Thank you, Art. I want to ask you, first of all, to read a portion to yourself. And I want to ask you some questions about it. Read to yourself. Have you read that, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. I may be allowed to ask a couple questions from here, Your Honor. So if there's an indication that you indicated to the police that you and your wife had lived at this location at 862 Gretna Green Way for about 2 years, would that be accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
Would it be accurate that last night, that is June 12, 1994,
Objection. What's the purpose of this? Is there impeachment being offered? I'm not going to offer a brief sidebar.
Oral. Oral.
last night, June 12, 1994, witness and his wife were watching the Channel 5 news at 10 o'clock p.m. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
At approximately 10:15 to 10:30 p.m., witnesses heard a dog barking uncontrollably to the rear of their residence. Do you recall so indicating to the police?
I recall actually pointing to the police the specific location that I heard the barking sound coming from.
Now, let me get back to my question. Okay, my question is, do you recall so indicating to the police that at about 10:15 to 10:30, witnesses, you and your wife, heard a dog barking uncontrollably to the rear of their residence? Did you so indicate that to the police?
No, sir. As I told you, I told them that I heard the dog barking between 10:15 and 10:20.
All right, so if they have that wrong, they're wrong. Is that right?
That is possible because I did not say that.
Okay. Did you then tell the police, sir, that you went outside on your rear porch to look?
No, sir, I did not tell them that either.
You didn't tell the police that either?
No, sir.
That you looked to the south toward Nicole Simpson's residence. Is that correct?
That is correct. I did that from the master bedroom.
All right. Did you go out on the porch and do that?
No, I did not, sir.
All right. Do you have a porch that looks south?
I have a porch, and basically I just popped open the plantation shutters and looked out, and...
Can you listen to the question? Do you have a porch?
Yes, sir, I do have a porch.
Did you ever, on June 12th, in the late evening hours, go out on the porch and look south down the alleyway?
No, sir.
May I ask that counsel be instructed to go back to counsel table?
Well, I'm still not finished with the
Is there any other?
Yes, there is. So,
Well, why doesn't he leave the report with the witness?
No, let's,
do you want to discuss examination? May I proceed?
you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, so in answer to the question, you never went out on this porch, actually, is that right, sir?
No, sir, I do not recall going out on the porch.
And also, at that time, at June 13th, 1994, in the early morning hours, you didn't know whose residence this was down there, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you ever tell the police that he observed a Jeep parked in the driveway but saw no suspects, vehicles, or activity? Tell the police that?
I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding, and if I can clarify that.
Okay,
No, I did not tell the police that.
That's the question.
Objection, Your Honor, the witness is allowed to explain.
Hold on. He will. Mr. Cochran, I don't see there any need for you to be there at this
Okay,
point.
just one more minute, and I'll be on my way.
All right.
Well, okay,
Do you need to show him something that's there?
yes, I do.
All
I'd
right.
like for him, now, moving on. I'd like for you to read from this point to the end, to yourself. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Read that now? Yes, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Turn over that.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Fenves, sir, you never told the police that you observed a Jeep parked in the driveway but saw no suspects, vehicles, or activity. You never told them that? Or did you tell them that?
A variation on that theme may have,
Variation on the theme?
yes.
Okay, well, let's see. See if we can figure out what part you told them.
If I could be allowed to explain it.
You will be, you will be.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out whether or not the report is accurate first, and you can explain, sir, okay? Did you, when you looked through your shutters, see a Jeep parked in the driveway that night?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you see any suspects when you looked through your shutters that night?
No, I did not.
Did you see any vehicles when you looked through your shutters that night?
No, I did not.
Did you see any activity when you looked through your shutters that night?
Nothing at all unusual.
And then you also told the officers, did you not, that neither you nor your wife knew who lived in the house at that point. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And you told the officers, did you not, that the dog continued to bark until you went to bed at approximately 11:30. Is that accurate?
I actually went to bed at 11. I may have gone to sleep by 11:30, but I did tell them that I heard the dog after I had returned to bed.
All right, so that's fairly accurate, 11:30.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Now, let's back up. You wanted to explain to us that you told the officers something that it was obviously not correct in the statement that I read you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Did you tell them at some point, sir, that you'd seen a Jeep at that location on other occasions? A few days before?
I may have said that I'd seen a Jeep there, but I don't recall that.
All right, you don't recall that at all. All right. And the Jeep, if you saw that Jeep there, what color was it?
The Jeep in question was a green Jeep.
Dark green?
Yes, sir.
All right. And had you
I believe it was green.
Okay, your best recollection.
Right.
Okay. And this dark green Jeep, had you seen that at times before June 12th, 1994?
I believe I may have seen that same Jeep in the alley.
Now, with regard to the timing of the evening this happened, you and your wife disagree as to the time that you first heard this barking, don't you?
Do we?
Yeah, do you? I'm asking you.
Not to my recollection.
And she was present during this interview that you had with the police on June 13th, is that correct? Next morning?
Well, she was present for part of it, but they basically focused their attention on me, and she went about some other business she had to take care of.
But she also talked to them also during that interview, did she not?
Very briefly, I believe she did, yes.
Now, sir, after a period of time, whether it was 10, 20, or whatever time, about 5 to 7 minutes after you first heard the barking, You then left from your bedroom area, and that's when you went downstairs to your office area. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And as I understand your testimony, during this period of time, your office is fairly secure.
Yes, sir.
And so you couldn't hear what was going on at that point. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
And as I understand further, so that
But is there a porch?
if it's now close to 10:30, you stayed in your office for maybe a half hour thereabouts?
That is correct.
And so then it would be approximately 11 o'clock when you returned back upstairs to the bedroom area. Is that correct?
It was 11 o'clock.
It was 11 o'clock. And now with regard to, you were downstairs in your office somewhere around a half hour?
30 to 40 minutes.
Okay. And your wife, do you know, where was she when you left to go down to your office?
I believe she was. I believe she stayed in the master bedroom.
Okay.
I don't know whether she closed the balcony doors. I have no idea.
Okay. The question now relates to where she was when you left. She was in the master bedroom?
Yes, sir.
And did you ever see her during this 30 to 40 minute period downstairs in your office?
No, sir.
When you returned back upstairs to your office, was she still in the master bedroom?
Yes, she was.
All right. Was she still in the same general area where you had left her?
Yes, whatever she had been watching was just ending, so that's how I knew it was 11 o'clock.
So whatever was on television, was it Dynasty reunion or?
Yes, I think that's what it was, actually.
Dynasty reunion.
Yes,
And it was just about going off at about 11 o'clock, is that right?
that is correct.
When you came back up. All right. And you, as I understand your testimony, when you came back upstairs and now it's 11 o'clock, you know that because Dynasty reunion was going off, this dog was continuing to bark, is that correct?
That is correct.
You could now hear it again at any rate.
Yes, sir.
Had you ever, on nights before June 12th, 1994, heard that dog bark, so you could identify that particular bark?
No, sir, not in that way. I mean, not in a way that would call attention to itself.
Okay, there are a lot of people who walk dogs in that area, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir, including myself.
Including you, you walk dogs.
That's right.
And you indicated in your direct examination you felt this dog and this sounded like an unhappy dog, as you described it.
That is correct.
And you had not heard this unhappy dog sound before, right?
That is correct.
In that particular area.
Yes, sir.
That night, as you listened, especially either before you went downstairs to your office or when you came back up, did you hear other dogs barking who sound less unhappy?
Not that I can recall. I mean, certainly nothing that made me sit up and take note.
All right. So, with regard to when you looked out of your shutters, was that before you went down to the office or after you came back up?
I believe I looked out of my shutters both times.
All right, so you think you may have looked out twice?
Yes, sir.
You never went out on the porch, but you looked out of the shutters.
That is correct.
And so that you can help the court and jury, sir, when you looked out of this shutter, these shutters are in your bedroom, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You're looking in a southerly direction, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've described for this court and jury that as you looked in the southerly direction and your belief that this sound of unhappy dog was coming from near the area of Bundy and Dorothy, right?
That is correct.
And can you tell us the residence that you saw on the screen there, how far is that residence from the corner? How many houses is that from the corner?
I believe there's probably two houses between that. Well, there's actually one lot between that residence and the corner. That's
Right.
it.
One lot, two houses?
No, one lot, one house, I believe.
Okay, so one lot and one house.
No, just one house
just
on
one
one
house.
lot.
All right, you sure about that?
I'm not positive, and obviously there's the unit that is part of the same condominium building. That was the unit next to the one that Nicole Brown Simpson
Yum.
lived in.
But at any rate, so that we're clear, the unit that you came to learn was Nicole Brown Simpson's unit was not on the corner of Bundy and Dorothy.
No, it was not on the corner.
There was at least one unit south of that particular residence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is right.
And so that we're clear, how far north did you live, your estimation, did you live at that point, north of the corner of Bundy and Dorothy, in yards or feet, sir?
I'd guess 150 yards,
150 yards?
maybe 125 yards.
All right, and having in mind a football field, it would be about 25 yards over and above what would be a regular football field, right?
Right.
And with regard to that unit that you were shown by Ms. Clark, The lighting that you saw, maybe we have that photograph put back up, I'm not sure the number. We'll put that. The number, I'm not sure this has the number out here.
I think it's 39.
With regard to that particular unit, the lighting that you see on 39 now, the lighting didn't look like that night, did it, sir?
No, it did not look like that.
Okay, now I want you to be as accurate as you can. As you look down that alley, we understand you're looking from the north toward the south. Looking from the north to the south. Describe for the court and jury.
Happy Valentine's Day.
You're looking well, let me see if I can understand. You're at north looking toward the south, right?
That's right.
And what I'm asking you to do now is to, describe for us the lighting that night with regard to that building.
Well, with regard to this photograph, I cannot see the windows. They're not included in this photograph, but on the left side of this building,
Yes, sir.
moving toward Bundy, on the top floor, there's a row of windows.
Okay, you can't see what I'm doing. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
You're talking about on the left side or the north side of the building, there's some windows?
Right. That's exactly
Okay.
right.
You couldn't see this portion?
I
Yeah.
could not see this
So in
portion.
other words, what's depicted here is not what you could see at all, is that right?
That is correct.
Gee, okay, so you could see the north side of that building. Why'd you say G?
G,
G, okay, it's strike G.
gosh.
Okay, thank you.
Stop it.
Okay, oh, yes, Your Honor. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Now, with regard to this then, sir, you could see the north side of the building, as I'm indicating there. Is that right? Look at this photo, the left side?
That's right.
Okay, and tell us and describe for the court and jury what you could see with regard to that left side, any windows or anything.
There are maybe 3 or 4 windows up there that don't appear to open. I can't tell whether there's any rooms up there. It seems to me it may be some kind of stairwell leading to a deck. That's about all I can tell you about.
And you've never been in there at that time, is that correct?
I beg your pardon?
You've never been in that place at that time,
In that
particular unit?
yes, I have actually. I was there when it was on the market,
Well, you had been there at the time?
Yes.
And this was before June 12th?
long before, 2 years ago.
So in 1982?
Right.
Okay. And these windows that you believe where you saw these lights, do you recall seeing those when you were in there in 1982?
And no, sir, I do not.
All right. So you just saw some lighting coming from the windows. Is that what you saw?
That is correct.
And did you see anything else with regard to that side of the building or anything else relating to that particular building at that time?
No, as I think I mentioned, there seems to be some deck area up there and an awning,
All right.
an umbrella that had not been unfurled.
Anything else that you recall seeing at that time?
That's all I can tell you.
All right. How long did you look out of the shutter window on each occasion, if there were 2 occasions, sir?
Oh, 10, 15 seconds.
Very short, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And ultimately, then, you went to bed and went to sleep sometime around 11:30 that particular night. Is that correct?
I got into bed around 11 and I read for a while. And I can't tell you I fell asleep immediately or in 40 minutes.
All right. And would it be correct that you perhaps fell asleep about 11:30 or 11:40?
It's a possibility, yes.
Did you so testify at the preliminary hearing?
I believe I did, yes.
11:30, 11:40. And at that time, that was fairly accurate as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
And as far as you know, the dog may have continued to bark later than that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you also indicate or testify that it's not unusual to hear dogs barking in that particular neighborhood?
Yes, sir, I did say that.
And you never at any time went outside in an effort to see where that dog was barking or where that dog was, did you?
No, I did not.
Did you indicate at the preliminary hearing that you usually watch the first 20 minutes or so of the news and it gets into areas that I'm not interested in?
Yes, I think I said the first 15 or 20 minutes of the news, and then it gets into areas I'm not interested in.
Well, would it be helpful for you to see what you actually said? Okay, may I page 27 of his testimony, Your Honor. Preliminary, may I approach page 27, counsel? Well, let me ask you this. Just refresh your recollection. Question, is that a 1-hour newscast? Answer, well, I don't know. I usually watch the first 20 minutes of the news, then I sort of, it gets into areas I'm not that interested in. Is that correct? Do you remember so testifying?
Yes, I do.
And then you went on to say, question, I see. So you regularly stop watching after about 20 minutes? Answer, about 20 to 25 minutes, yeah. You recall so testifying?
I believe so.
And then you went on to say, and it was about 20 or 25 minutes then into...
Objection, that was the question, not the answer. This witness did not go on to say, counsel went on to say, that it was about...
Let's be clear on the question and answer here.
Okay, may I finish, please? Okay. Let me read this question so we're clear. Question. I see. So you regularly stop watching after about 20 minutes. Answer, about 20 to 25 minutes, yeah. That was the answer. And is that how you so testified, sir?
I believe so.
All right.
Objection, Your Honor, counsel stopped short of the actual answer for that night.
If you would just sit and be patient, I'm going to get the rest of the transcript. I might be able to
Yes,
conduct
right
this.
here.
Counsel, hold on. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. And continuing on, do you recall being asked this question and giving this answer, sir?
Well,
And it was about...
I recall being asked that question, and I think I corrected the question when it was asked.
All right, let me read you the next question.
Okay.
Answer. Question, and it was about 20 or 25 minutes then into the newscast that you first heard the dog. Answer, no, I think. And just like now, Your Honor, objection, Ms. Clark. The witness, it was about 15 or 20 minutes into the newscast that I first heard the dog. The court, excuse me for just one moment. And then goes on the judge. The judge admonished the lawyers then, just like now. Did you? And then the question, and I'll end it with this. The question was, did you hear the dog continue to bark as you were watching the news? Answer, yes, I did. Right?
Right.
Did you ever become aware of any members of the Los Angeles Police Department out and around in that alley south of where you lived that particular night? And you, when you awakened the next morning at or about 9 o'clock or whenever you awakened, you had this conversation with the two police officers I talked to you about that next morning on the 13th. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And as you were talking to the police officers, you described for the jury, they were focusing in on you. Did they seem to be writing down what you were saying?
Yes, I believe they were taking notes.
And they would ask you questions and they would write something down on a tablet?
That is correct.
And it's true, is it not, that at some point, did the officers ask you to take a look from your house looking southerly down that alley there?
That's right. And I think that's where the confusion arose because we stepped out onto the balcony.
You've answered the question now. They asked you to look south, did they?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then when you looked south, did you say to them at some point that the Jeep was parked there a few days ago? Did you make that statement?
Yes, I believe I did.
And you were referring to the dark green Jeep that you talked about earlier, sir?
Yes, but as I think back on it now, that Jeep was actually there and it was being dusted as we were looking down the alley.
So it was being dusted at that time on June 13th?
Yes, so I was able to say right there where the Jeep is parked.
Okay. And then, but you had not seen that Jeep the night before. You may have
I
seen
had
it.
not seen that Jeep the night
Okay.
before.
And so that we're clear, when you said that Jeep was being dusted, what do you mean by that?
The police technicians were in the area and
They were dusting the Jeep for fingerprints?
For fingerprints, yes, sir.
You saw some powder on the Jeep?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You are not, you're a dog owner, is that correct?
That's right.
And as such, I presume you've owned a dog for some number of years?
A couple of years, yeah.
you're not an expert in dogs barking as such, are you?
No, sir, I do not pretend to be.
And you can't tell a particular pedigree of a dog, one dog over another, when they bark, can you?
No, I cannot, sir.
And as I understand it, you never, at any time that night, saw a dog.
I did not see a dog.
Yeah, just a moment, Your Honor. Thank you. Statement that I read to you, written by the two officers, Tippin and Carr, you have seen that statement before today, have you not?
I believe it was shown to me during the preliminary hearing, yes.
Right. And have you seen it since that time at all?
No, I have not.
That's the only time you think you saw it.
Yes, sir.
And prior to testifying here, did you have occasion to review or read your preliminary hearing testimony?
Yes, sir, I did.
And who gave you that?
It was supplied for me by the district attorney when I was subpoenaed.
Okay, and they gave you a copy of what you testified about before?
That is correct.
And you read that over, of course?
Yes, sir.
And then when you came down here, is this the first day you've been down?
Yes, sir.
When you came down here today, you talked to one of the district attorneys before you took the stand?
I did.
Which one did you talk to?
I believe I talked to Sherry Lewis.
And that's the very nice lady over there, right?
Yes, that is correct.
When did you talk to her?
When did I talk to
Yes,
him?
yes.
This morning.
I have nothing further this morning, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yeah, I was wrong. I said it was going to take him 20 minutes to ask about dogs barking, and it took him 25 minutes to ask about stupid dogs barking.
All right, sir, when you indicated that the barking seemed to come from the area of Bundy and Dorothy, did you mean that precisely that corner, the very corner where Bundy and Dorothy intersect?
Sustain. It's leading.
What did you mean by that?
Overruled. You can answer the question.
Basically, that was the general area that the sound was coming from. It would be very hard to pinpoint the exact location, so that is the closest corner, and that's what I used as my, my geographical pinpoint.
As a reference point?
That's all it was, yes, ma'am.
And in your opinion, is the location of 875 South Bundy in the general area of Bundy and Dorothy?
Yes, it is.
Now, you asked for permission to explain to us that statement in the police report about seeing the Jeep.
Object to follow this question. It's argument started.
Overruled.
And would you like a chance to explain that?
Yes, very briefly, what happened was the two officers asked me if we could go out on the deck and take a look at the house. And we did this, and I assume the confusion arose from the fact that we were out on the deck and that there was a green Jeep that was being dusted for fingerprints in front of the Nicole Brown Simpson residence. And in their report, they made a small mistake and assumed that I had gone out on the night in question.
Overruled.
And do you recall giving that explanation at the preliminary hearing when you were asked about this issue previously back in July?
I may have tried giving that explanation. I may not have made myself as clear as I would have liked to make myself.
Do you recall also being asked at the preliminary hearing back in July about the portion of the police report that indicates that you went out on the rear porch when you heard the barking? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember being shown that report also.
And did you explain the discrepancy there as well?
Yes, I attempted to.
And do you recall what you explained to counsel back in July of 1994 about that discrepancy?
Object to the use of the word counsel. I was not there.
Mr. Shapiro was.
Overruled.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, we already explained that discrepancy.
No, Your Honor, what I'm trying to do is point out a prior consistent statement.
I'm sorry?
Prior consistent statement,
It's
12
asked and answered, it's already covered.
but not by me.
So then it's redundant, it's cumulative.
It's cumulative at this point.
May we approach?
Sure. All right, thank you, counsel. You may continue.
The objection overruled?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Your Honor. And back in July, did you indicate what the explanation was for that minor discrepancy about the rear, going out on the rear porch?
Minor discrepancy, yeah, that's conclusionary form.
It is conclusionary, the discrepancy.
The discrepancy.
Whether it's minor or major is for the jury to decide.
Yes, I did try to point it out.
And do you recall what the explanation was that you gave back in July at the preliminary hearing?
I believe I said something about a Jeep also, but I may have been confused and said it had been parked there a few days earlier. That's about all I remember.
Okay. Do you recall, I'm directing your attention now to the statement that counsel brought up about going out on the rear porch in response to hearing the barking.
Yes,
Okay. And you indicated to us that you didn't actually go out on the rear porch.
that is right. I did not go out on the rear.
Did you indicate an explanation at the time of the preliminary hearing back in July for what that misunderstanding might have been?
Yes, I think I said that I believe they may have been confused because we went out on the porch, and we being the police and I, and looked toward the residents in question.
And did you point out a residence to them?
Yes, I did.
And what residence was that?
The one that we've seen photographs of.
Now, even though we can't see it from the angle of your apartment, nevertheless, that photograph People's 39 that you see now, that photograph, does it accurately depict the location that you looked in when you heard the barking?
Yes, it does.
Just want to follow that question. You can't even see that part of the building. That's the proper question.
Overruled. She asked if it depicts the building, not the particular view you saw. Objection's overruled.
Now, the Jeep that you see in this photograph, sir, People's 39, does that appear to be the same Jeep that you saw being dusted for fingerprints by the police on the morning of June the 13th?
It appears to be the same Jeep, yes.
And that's the one that you describe as green?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you recall being questioned during the preliminary hearing about what time you heard the dog barking, what time you began to hear it bark?
Yes, I do.
And I'm going to direct counsel's attention to page 27 at line 28, lines 24, question, and it was about 20 or 25 minutes then into the newscast.
Just hold on, Ms. Clark.
I'm sorry. This was the same page counsel just read from.
27, line 24.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
I mean, yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You were being cross-examined then by Mr. Yulman, and he asked you, and it was about 20 or 25 minutes then into the newscast that you first heard the dog, and your answer was no. I think it was about 15 or 20 minutes into, excuse me, here's 28, into the newscast that I first heard the dog. And then question, did you hear the dog continue to bark as you were watching the news? Answer, yes, I did. And then you were asked for about how long? You answered, 5 to 7 minutes, and then I left. Do you recall those questions and answers at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, I do.
And directing counsel's attention to page 25. Now, you've indicated to us previously, sir, that you've heard dogs barking in that neighborhood before.
That's correct.
So that in itself was not unusual.
Not unusual at all.
But on this particular night, the sound of this particular dog did draw your attention.
Yes, it did.
It was an unusual sound.
Yes, ma'am.
Then,
Overruled.
and directing counsel's attention to page 25, and you were asked the following question at line 16. So it was an unusual sounding bark to you. You answer, right. Question, that was about 10:15 to 10:20, and your answer, yes. And then question, did the barking stop or did it continue? Your answer, well, about this time, I stopped watching the news.
We have passed now an hour, easy, of a dog barking. Because we had 18 minutes of it before we started today. We had 18 minutes of it yesterday. And we are at an hour now. No, that includes 18 minutes. So we are 6 seconds away from 1 whole hour of dog barking.
And went down to my office, and I did a little work, and I didn't come back upstairs until about 11 o'clock. Do you recall those questions and answers at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, I do.
And that is still your testimony, sir?
Yes, it is.
And on page 26, counsel, with reference to the time when you went back up to your room at 11 o'clock, you were asked about the barking you heard at that time. Question at line 18, did it sound like the same dog that you had heard barking earlier at 10:15 or so? And your answer, yes, it was definitely the same dog. Do you recall that question and answer?
Yes, I do.
And that is accurate?
Yes, it is.
And so is it your testimony, sir, that on the night of June the 12th, 1994, between 10:15 and 10:20, you began to hear a dog barking in an unusual way?
Overruled. Overruled.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Mr. Cochran?
Now, counsel referring to the transcript at page 26, line 6, leave the photograph on, line 6 through 12. Do you have it, counsel? Question, and at 11 o'clock, can you tell us whether you still heard the dog barking? Answer, yes, the dog was still barking. I remember going over to the shutters and taking a look out toward Nicole's building, and I saw some lights on upstairs, but of course, I couldn't pinpoint, where exactly the dog was. Did you so testify at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, I did.
And, sir,
Yes, Your Honor, counsel didn't finish the passage. It goes on.
Vice Citizen, thank you so much
That was a
for
question.
coming
It was a
by.
question and
Thank you.
answer.
On page 31, counsel, beginning at the question at line 1 through the question at line 10. Question. Now, you indicate you went to bed at about 11:30. Answer, I went to bed a little after 11. Question, all right. Answer, and I read for a while. Question, and the dog continued to bark? Answer, yes, sir. Question, how long did that barking continue? Answer, until I fell asleep, which may have been 11:30 or 11:40 p.m. Now, I want you to take a look at that photograph of 39 again. I want you to look, can you see that clearly? It might, I don't know what your monitor has on it, but may I put this monitor here? See? Thank you. Yes, yes, thank you, Your Honor. And then looking at that monitor, does that look like a dark green Jeep to you? That look like a black Jeep?
Well, I'm colorblind, so
Oh, well, then okay.
mildly colorblind.
Mildly? Do you have trouble discerning dark greens and blacks?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a dark colored Jeep, is that right?
Yes.
Are you a journalist of some kind?
I was for many years.
Were you back on June 12th, 1994?
No, I was not.
Journalist, you were no longer a journalist at that point?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you very kindly. Thank you for coming today. Start.
Very briefly. Mr. Pendas, you were just asked by counsel on page 26 that you went over to the shutters, you saw some lights upstairs, you couldn't pinpoint exactly where the dog was. And that was in response to questioning about what you did when you heard the barking, where you looked, what direction you looked in. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And then question, so you were looking out towards where you heard the sound coming from of the dog barking. Answer, that's correct. And you question, and you looked toward Nicole's house? Answer, that is correct. Do you recall giving those answers to those questions, sir?
Yes, I do, Mayor.
And is that still your testimony, sir?
Yes, it is, Mayor.
I have nothing further.
One last question. When you said you looked toward Nicole's house, you didn't know it was Nicole's house at that time. Somebody told you that. Is that right?
That's correct.
Who told you that?
Well, obviously, in the course of the...
Who told you that?
I can't remember. I mean, it was basically international news.
Nothing further?
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fenves, thank you very much for coming in today. I'm going to excuse you from further testimony at this time. Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody else except for the lawyers until the case is over. Do you understand the order, sir? All right, thank you very much.
Wow, we
All right,
made
next
it. Ooh, I hope they don't bring his wife up now.
Or you want to call it a day? Who do you have next? Why don't you approach?
I don't know. We got a big spike coming up. I don't know what for, but I bet they're going to argue with each other a little bit.
All right, thank you, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon at this time. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves in any way. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to talk to you about the case.
Don't talk about the case to yourself.
Don't perform any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you at the end of the case. All right, have
No
a
tarot
pleasant
cards.
evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 9
No
o'clock.
palm
Thank you.
reading. Do not consult the heavens. I think something happens here. We'll see. I bet they get into a fight.
All right, Mr. Cochran, you had some comment you wanted to make to the court?
Yes, just a passing and kind of a last comment for the day, Your Honor. Ms. Clark is wearing some jewelry today, which looks very, very similar to the jewelry worn by, or the pin worn by Miss Denise Brown. She had two of them the other day, and I think that it's inappropriate for counsel to be wearing the same thing as the witnesses, as though this is like some kind of a, I don't know how I might phrase it, but I think it's inappropriate. And I called it to Your Honor's attention earlier, and I'd just like to make the record. I think it's inappropriate, given the fact that certainly Ms. Brown can wear whatever she wants to wear, but when we see counsel coming into the courtroom wearing it, I think it's inappropriate.
All right,
So
just for the record, you made your objection when we were at a sidebar conference this afternoon without the court reporter, correct?
That's correct, so I wanted to indicate
About
that.
an hour ago.
That's correct.
All right, well, what are you proposing?
She take it off and not wear it anymore. I don't think that's appropriate. I think you made it clear we were not to wear any badges or buttons or anything of any support. I would be if we came into court and I wore a big number 32 and go walking around here with this jury. I wouldn't do that. It's just like she's wearing this the day after Miss Denise Brown gets on the stand. And they made some motion about some earring, which has this angel, and she had two angels on her shoulder. I don't think it's appropriate.
Ms. Clark?
Any human
Do you
emotion...
want to describe the item in question first so the record's clear?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. It's about maybe 3/4 of an inch big. It's a very small little angel.
Angel, gold angel with wings.
Angel with wings, with arms outstretched. Too small for any detail to be seen by the jury, certainly. I am really shocked at counsel's denunciation of nothing more than human emotion and sympathy. If sympathy is so shocking to counsel, then I wonder why he goes out and speaks of sympathy in such glorious tones when he's interviewed by the press every day on the steps of the courthouse. If obviously what Mr. Cochran thinks is that what's sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander. This is a very small and very tasteful show of support in compared to all of the jewelry and the pins Mr. Cochran wears every day, which he does and is visible to the jury. But not only that, but of all the constant barrage of publicity that he engages in, sympathetic to his client, sympathetic to his witnesses, denouncing the people's case and the people's witnesses and the victims in his own in insidious ways, I think it's very inappropriate for him, of all people, to come forward to this court and complain something as minor as showing support for the family of the victims in a symbolic way that is not proclaiming like wearing the number 32. It's a very small show of support that is very tasteful, very understated, and nothing nearly as prejudicial as the remarks he makes constantly to the press and the press conferences he tries to hold in court as well as outside of the court. I think that if anyone should come forward and make this argument, it should be one with clean hands, and we don't have one on that side of counsel table. So I would strongly urge the court to deny this ridiculous request.
Wrong, Marcia. That was all wrong, Marcia. It's none of his damn business what I have on my lapel. That's what you should have said.
And yet another request to suppress any sympathy or human emotion that may be appropriately given to the side of the victims, who, after all, are two young people who were brutally murdered.
Absolutely, Your Honor. I join in the sympathy for the victims, but Your Honor said we were not to wear buttons, badges, or whatever. And the next day she shows up with it. Now, she can say all she wants to say. Our jury is sequestered. Any statements that we're asked when we leave this courthouse, our jurors never see. But she's parading, walking back and forth, showing clothes 200 times today with that madam, that angel.
Mr. Cochran, those kinds of arguments about he did this and she did that and pointing fingers back and forth on all the other transgressions, real or imaginary, don't really persuade me one way or the other. The issue is the lapel pin that Ms. Clark has, whether or not it is identifiable with one side or the other. Ms. Clark concedes that it is. She says that it's an expression of support. So isn't it really a legal issue as to this pin and not about all these other things on one side or the other?
Focus. It's been a long day, and I appreciate the court focusing me back on this issue. The issue is your order to all of us to comply with, and she's violating that order. She can engage in all the self-serving rhetoric she wants to, but the issue is you told us not to do that, and nobody. She can be supportive, and I want her to be supportive. As a representative of the people, she represents all of us, so that's fine. She can do her job. She's a fine lawyer. But she doesn't have to wear this pin because it's inappropriate. Because you told us not to do it. That's pure and simple. And so I ask you to do something about it. It has nothing to do with any the sympathy toward the victims. It's your order, and it was entirely and appropriately made. What happens in this courtroom is very appropriate. not outside, because our jury sees this as opposed to anything that happens outside the courtroom. That's why they're sequestered.
Your Honor, if this were a badge or a button that had the pictures of the victims on it, I could understand counsel's concern. But, this is nothing but symbolic. I'm sure that the jurors don't have any idea what it means. Only it is something that is known within the families. It may be indeed known to the public now, but as Mr. Cochran said, the jury is sequestered. It is a symbolic gesture, but not one that is palpable to the jury. It's very small. I don't even know if the jury can tell it's an angel from the distance they're at from me. And I think the court can rest assured that there is no prejudice that's inuring to the defense as a result of this, and I even find counsel's concern in this regard remarkable. Some little pin that the jury can barely see me wear has got him all excited today. I just don't understand it, especially in view of the conduct of counsel. If there's anything that's inappropriate in this case, it's the conduct of counsel before this jury and the kind of speaking objections we're constantly getting and the press conferences that counsel's always trying to hold wherever he goes. So I really...
Yes, she admitted it.
And as my learned co-counsel points out accurately, Mr. Cochran is always coming into court wearing a cross. These are all symbols and gestures. His symbol is even more explicit. If we're going to take off pins, everybody take off pins.
What I'm wearing today, I wear
No,
pins.
Mr. Cochran, you have a wide assortment of lapel pins.
And my pins are not identified with O.J. Simpson, Your Honor. And so that they protest too much again, Your Honor. I point out, as an officer of the court, what you had told us not to do. And what she fails to understand is she's wearing this in court where the jurors can see it. And if you recall, she tried to elicit testimony from Ms. Denise Brown about the earring, wearing the one earring and why we stopped that. She tried to elicit testimony why she was wearing this stuff right here in court. This is an orchestrated thing. So we have an obligation for our client to bring this out. We brought it out, Your Honor. I'm not going to belabor it any further. And she can make these long speeches, but the fact remains she has it on. She shouldn't have it on. She knows she shouldn't have it on. And we ask you to rule on it.
Well, I don't know any such thing, but let me explain one thing to the court. The counsel's misrepresenting completely. We were asking Ms. Brown to testify to the fact that Nicole wore mismatched earrings, one dangly, one stud. Not an angel at all. The counsel gets all excited and gets worried, about the fact that the jury, no. Counsel still has it wrong. All we wanted from Denise was to testify that she wore mismatched earrings because they found one dangle and one stud on Nicole. That's all. And because counsel's so worried about this jury, God forbid, feeling sympathetic to two young people who were murdered, they're jumping all over us before they even know what the answer to the question might be. But the truth of the matter is, we were not going to elicit any testimony about an angel. Rest assured of that. We were going to elicit only the testimony I've indicated, and it was an appropriate thing to do, given counsel's insistence on trying to portray this as a robbery or burglary murder. And that's all we were trying to do.
See, to my recollection, we've only had one member of the Brown family testify thus far, correct?
That's correct.
I saw a similar, although not identical, piece of jewelry that Denise Brown had.
Right.
I don't recall if the Goldman family wears the same jewelry. I did not notice anything on Kimberly Goldman.
No, I didn't either.
Although, to tell you the truth, jewelry is not my forte as somebody who wears plastic watches. I mean, this is not something I pay attention to. Ms. Clark, my concern, though, is your concession that it is a show of support. And if either family is wearing these as some symbol, then, and if it is possible for the jury to identify it as such, then it's probably not appropriate. And if the family members are going to further testify and wear these things in court, I agree with you, they are very subtle and they're very small, but I don't believe it's appropriate for counsel to wear one of these. All right.
Then, I don't know who's wearing it anymore, Your Honor. If we could ask the court to defer its ruling until we see what the families look like in the morning?
Well, counsel, I've told you, I feel it's inappropriate. I plan on doing another Lexis search on these types of things, but I think in the morning I'm going to reaffirm the ruling.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, counsel. me see you briefly without the report, please. Hold on.
That's a good point.
All right, can we have it quiet, please? Ms. Clark, you have a witness you want ordered back? Who was that?
Eva Stein, Louis Carp, Sucru Bostepi, Stephen Schwab.
All right, Ms.
Sorry
Clark.
about that. Eva Stein, Louis Carp, K-A-R-P-F, Sucru Bostepi, common spelling, Stephen Schwab.
All right, each of you is ordered to return to this courthouse tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m., report to the district attorney's office. Do you each understand the order? Are they all not in the affirmative? Mr. Bostepi, do you understand that? All right, thank you very much. All right, let me see counsel without the reporter, please. Is Mr. Jones here?
Yes, he is, Your Honor. He's in the foyer.
Oh, all right. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is not present before the court. Three of his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Bailey, are present. People represented by Ms. Sherry Lewis, and present on behalf of the subpoenaed witness is Counsel Carl Jones. Good morning, Counsel.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Mr. Jones, you have a motion to quash the subpoena for Marguerite Simpson Thomas.
We have, Your Honor. We are moving to quash the subpoena based on the outrageous manner in which the service took place, activities which we feel should shock the conscience of the court, and/or because the witness has no relevant material testimony to offer. You have been presented with two sets of facts. Both cannot be true. Our version has a subterfuge taking place at the front door of the Thomas home on December 27th. The people's version, as reflected in the reports, read as if Mr. Thomas does not exist, as if nothing happened between the police officers and Mr. Thomas, and that their activities start at the front door with Mrs. Thomas when they knocked at the door, identified themselves, and politely served her with the subpoena, at which point she responded, "You chicken shits," quote, end quote. Now, we think the court has the power
I like her.
to quash the subpoena in this case because of the power inherent in the court to control the proceedings that take place before it. We also think that the court has the power to quash this subpoena based on the cases in which outrageous police misconduct took place, and serious criminal charges have been dismissed or contraband has been suppressed. And we talked at one past appearance about the power to do the greater should include the power to do the lesser. It is our position that if the court, based on outrageous police misconduct, conduct which shocks the conscience of the court, has the power to dismiss charges and to suppress evidence, then certainly it has the power to do what we are asking, which is to quash the subpoena. We also think that the power of this court to suppress the subpoena comes by analogy to other cases where pretexts have been used and then condemned. Pretexts, for example, in the areas of traffic stops where they are used as a subterfuge to conduct searches for evidence of other crimes. We have pretextual vehicle impounding as an excuse to do an inventory, to rummage for evidence of other crimes. We have pretextual arrests, where one arrest is made as a ruse to conduct a search for evidence of other crimes. All of those cases give this court the power to quash this subpoena because of the pretext that was used at the door of the Thomas home, namely asking Mr. Thomas to come outside in response to an investigation having to do with an auto burglary, a burglary of his vehicle. And when he disappeared with the officers, having them come back to the door in his absence, infer to Mrs. Thomas that her husband, her loved one, was either injured or dead, and she should come outside immediately, at which time they served her with the subpoena. We think that was outrageous. We think that
That
all
is
of these
outrageous.
cases that condemn pretexts apply. And we think that if the court is looking for another reason to quash, some factor in addition to the improper service, then we can look to the fact that Mrs. Thomas has no relevant or material testimony to offer in this case. Now, in my paperwork, I have been supplied with reports that say, or that quote Mrs. Thomas as indicating that the defendant Simpson never hit me, never beat me, never abused me, never battered me. I don't think they would call her in their case to establish that. She also is quoted as saying, Mr. Simpson told me he was innocent and that he was being framed. I don't think that they would call her to testify to that. She also is quoted as saying, Mr. Simpson asked me to keep his younger children involved in the black church and in touch with the black side of their heritage. I don't think they would call her to testify to that. The only thing that I have been supplied with as coming close to any basis for calling her is a report covering an incident by that can be summarized as this. On some unknown date, about 20 years ago, a backup officer responded to an unknown address with unknown primary officers and took Mrs. Thomas, Simpson at that time, to an unknown location where she stayed for an unknown time. And that this backup officer, the one thing he is certain in the middle of all of those unknowns is that she, Mrs. Thomas, had no visible injuries. And I think that that is not relevant, that is not material, and that is no reason to have her come in here. The other thing that I would point out to the court, and you have this report attached to the people's response, is that it appears that on December 27th, which is the point in time that we should be testing when the subpoena was served, that the people did not have this information in their possession, because the notation in the bottom left corner indicates received 1/9/95. Now, if 1/9/95 means January 9th, 95, they did not have this on December 27th, 94, and I don't think I think a good argument could be made that this provides no basis whatsoever, and attaching it to these papers in opposition does not help you decide what relevant material information she had on December 27th. Now, I would ask the court to do the following. Observe that not one single deputy district attorney has attached an affidavit to these moving parties. And that is to their credit, I would submit, because these reports, which tend to justify this service, is a half-truth, a distortion, and misleading in the sense that it starts at the front door as if nothing had ever happened. I would ask the court to reject the invitation by the titles used in that police report as of chaplain officer so-and-so doing such and such, because those titles are misleading. And the titles that come to my mind are Reverend Jim Jones of the Jamestown Massacre and Reverend Jim Baker and other reverends that don't match the invitation that's being extended to this court by the use of the term chaplain. I would ask Your Honor to consider the incredible scenario that the people want you to
Hi,
swallow,
Jen.
which is this lady is in hiding, and they go up to the door and they knock on the door and they say, Miss Thomas, police officers, would you please open the door? And this lady who is in hiding and who is in concealment opens the door, and they give her the subpoena. That is not consistent with someone who is in hiding. Her response, however, you chicken shits, is consistent with our version of the facts, which is they had lured her husband outside based on a lie about his vehicle being burglarized.
Let me ask you a question. My recollection of the civil code that deals with the service of subpoenas does allow a court to issue orders to allow police officers to even break and enter to serve subpoenas under the appropriate circumstances, where these officers apparently didn't resort to that.
I don't know. It could be OJ's ex-wife, which is just awesome. But I appreciate the fact that the police can trap people like that. Because, what is it? Like, some serial killers were caught because they do, like, these fake lotteries. Hey, you won a prize, come on over and get it. And the serial killers show up, and then the police finally catch them. I mean, I don't want to get caught in one of their traps, but I appreciate that they're allowed to do things like that. It's good for me, I think, because then they can get people who are trying to hide.
You are correct, Your Honor, and the difference is gigantic, because what happens in the situation that you are touching on is that a detached, neutral magistrate, much like the magistrate with a search warrant, is given all of the information that they have. And that detached, neutral magistrate then decides whether or not there is sufficient cause to authorize these officers to break open the door in order to accomplish the service. There is no code, civil procedure, civil, criminal, penal, or any other code that allows the officers to do that without the evaluation of the detached, neutral magistrate. In this case, the people bypassed that magistrate, and they went out to the house. And what they did is traumatize Mrs. Thomas by inferring the injury to her husband. Now, there are cases which permit the police to say telegram, florist, FedEx, or some innocuous excuse in order to get the occupant to open the door. But there is no case that says you can create the stress and the tension and the climate of fear that was created in this case.
So you're analogizing to the intentional infliction of emotional harm cases.
Well, I would, except that sounds like she wants to sue somebody. And she is not interested in suing. What she wants is to be treated with the respect and dignity that she's entitled to. She's not a suspect. She's not a defendant. She has done nothing wrong except be the victim of a cruel hoax by these people. These reports, it's much like Watergate. Watergate started off as a second-rate burglary, and it reached a national scandal level because of the cover-up. These people did what they did at the door, and then they filed reports with you, not by any police officer who was involved, not by any deputy district attorney who was involved, and omitting all references to what happened between them and the husband, and then uses the term chaplain in order to invite you to attach some credibility to that. And then they attach a report that they apparently received in January to justify conduct in December. I think it's outrageous. I think that what they did is totally inconsistent with what they claim. They claim in these reports that she was not in hiding. Her response indicates that her husband had been tricked outside. And their reports, which indicate she was not in hiding, I would add, is totally contrary to the representations made by Mrs. Clark here on January 3rd when I filed these papers and I complained of this conduct, and Ms. Clark said on January 3rd at 9 o'clock, we had to do that because she was hiding from us. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your Honor, in deciding whether the court should indeed quash the subpoena, there's only one relevant issue for the court to decide, and that is whether this witness has relevant and material information to offer. There is absolutely no authority for the proposition that the court can quash the subpoena on any ground other than that, and that was the gist of our responsive brief and the People v. Superior Court Long case, which indeed holds that that is the only means in which the subpoena for a witness can be quashed. The authority cited by counsel does not apply here. This morning I supplied the court and counsel with the Fabricant case, which indicates the Code of Civil Procedure, Section 1987.1, has no application in criminal cases. That case squarely held that. In addition, I was going to remind the court, which the court already took note of Code of Civil Procedure, Section 1988, which certainly carries with it a harsher manner of accomplishing service than anything that was nearly approached in this case, and that is to allow the sheriffs to go break down someone's door. Certainly if someone were going to suffer emotional distress as a result of being served with a subpoena, that would be the situation where that happens. Further, the case law that counsel cites with regard to outrageous governmental conduct has no application here. There's not a single statute or a single case that I'm aware of, and I looked to see whether that has ever been applied in this instance in terms of moving to quash a subpoena, and it has not. There is simply no authority for that. As long as counsel mentioned the idea of pretext stops, the evolution of that law, indeed, is that so long as the police act lawfully, it does not matter what was in their mind or what subjective thinking they had. In fact, I'm aware of the most recent pretext stop case by the Court of Appeal was People v. Todd, decided a couple of months ago, I believe, at 30 Cal App 4th, 617. I think that was the fourth advance sheet from now, or third advance sheet from now. At any rate, that has no application here either. That's not an analogous situation any more than the cases which dismiss based on government conduct is. So what the court really has to decide here, and all the court has to decide, is whether Marguerite Simpson Thomas has relevant and material information to offer in testimony. And she does. We know, first of all, that she was married to the defendant for 12 years, from the period of 1967 to 1979.
Man, you're so smart.
And the police officer, who, by the way, I received information with regard to that police officer's knowledge before we got the report in hand. That police officer indicated that he had been out to that location of where the defendant was living with his first wife approximately 20 years prior to that, which would have been 1974, since the police officer's report is dated late 1994. and 1974 would have been squarely in the middle of the 1967 to 1979 years, during which Marguerite Simpson was married to the defendant Simpson. And he recalls it well enough to recall that she had claimed she had been hit and that she and the children were removed from the home. That is a significant event, especially when one considers that it took place 20 years ago. As the court is certainly aware, the evolution of the seriousness with which police respond to domestic violence calls has brought us to the point where there is a serious response. 20 years ago, I submit, there was not a serious response. So the fact that those children and the wife had to be removed from the home certainly lend credence to the importance of that incident.
When was that information made available to the prosecution? When did you become aware of that?
I didn't make a note of the date, Your Honor. The officer who had that report brought it into the office at some time after that. I'm sorry, I didn't make note of the date that I became aware of it, but I did become aware of it before we actually got the report.
Mm-hmm. What is your response to Mr. Jones' argument that that information was not made available to the prosecution prior to the December 27th date of the service of the subpoena?
I think, though, I cannot honestly tell the court one way or the other. I think it was made available to us before then, but I'm not sure. At any rate, Your Honor, that is not
Well, then let me ask you another question then. Let's excise then from the thought process of issuing a subpoena for her, what is there that's material then that's left?
There, in terms of her relevance and testimony,
Yes.
There is a lot, Your Honor. She spoke to a police detective with the Robbery Homicide Division on June 23rd, 1994, and she had several things to say, which we, as the prosecution, feel it is incumbent upon us to investigate and to determine what can be gleaned from that information. Initially, she received a threatening phone call on her answering machine, which was made to, as she described, her unlisted home telephone number. And during that during that message that was left, the man who left the message threatened to kill her. Now, she was advised by Detective Harrow, I believe it was, of RHD, Robbery Homicide Division, to save that microcassette. We would like to talk to her about that. We would like to obtain that microcassette and do voice comparisons. Although Ms. Simpson-Thomas indicated that she did not recognize the voice on that tape, we as prosecutors would like to do some comparisons with known voices and see if they're...
Excuse me, Ms. Lewis, was that threatening phone call, the message, was it relevant to any of the facts and circumstances of this case?
Well, we don't know. The timing was very interesting that it happened on June 23rd, Your Honor, only 13 days or 10 days, 11 days after the murders in this case. So we need to find out exactly what is on that tape. We need to do comparisons. Part of the difficulty is in that, and I don't want to get into this factual dispute, but part of the difficulty was that Marguerite Simpson-Thomas was indeed evading contact with the district attorney's office, so we could not determine that in another manner. But of even greater salient relevance to this particular case was a conversation she had on June 17th with the defendant at Bob Kardashian's home in Encino. And she indicated to the police detective who interviewed her that the defendant Simpson asked her to go to his home on Rockingham. That's all the report indicates in that regard. We need to know why, for what purpose. This was hours before the defendant fled with Mr. Cowlings in the Ford Bronco, and after he knew he was going to be arrested. We want to know the details of that conversation. In addition, Your Honor, apparently she also spoke to Mr. Simpson when she did arrive at the Rockingham residence by cell phone. Apparently the defendant called her on a cell phone from the Bronco and spoke to her at that time. We would like to know the details of that conversation. These are all facts that could well be very important to the case. Now, recognizing that the court has made valiant attempts to limit both sides to only the one argument in cases, I want to address for a moment the idea that even if the court were to accept a notion that the court has the authority, even without statute or without case law in point, to dismiss the subpoena or to quash the subpoena based on outrageous governmental conduct, this declaration, which Mr. Jones has provided, Your Honor, actually read more like, to me, a civil complaint for intentional or negligent infliction of emotional distress. I found it interesting that the court made a similar type of observation. because it concentrates a great deal on Marguerite Simpson Thomas's state of mind as a result of the alleged conduct. But what I want to do, and I want to make it crystal clear, that the allegations as set forth with regard to December 27th in Mr. Jones's declaration are not the way that it happened. And we can have a full-blown hearing and take up this court's time, despite having a sequestered jury, and ask the court to make that determination. But I do want to make it clear that we are not saying those facts happened. They did not happen. But I'd ask the court to treat that declaration sort of like a complaint in a civil case and a demurrer which is brought against it, and look at the allegations on their face, even accepting they're true. And again, I can't say it enough, especially with a camera and the way that non-lawyers understand these things, that it did not go down that way, and we have the investigators involved in it here prepared to testify, and we can take all the court's time the court, I'm sure, doesn't want to do in that regard. But if the court looks at the allegations that are made with regard to the conduct in Mr. Jones's declaration, all it alleges is that the police called the husband outside on a pretext, yelled something about her husband which caused her to open the door. It does not even indicate what it was that was yelled within the declaration, but yelled something about her husband which caused her to open the door, and put their foot in the door long enough to throw a subpoena inside. And that's the end of the factual allegation. Then it talks about her mental state. So by implication, law enforcement left at that time. So what I'm suggesting, Your Honor, is that even if the court were to want to look beyond, want to look at the facts themselves, which the court need not do in this regard, as a matter of law, there is no outrageous governmental conduct, even under the allegations that Mr. Jones' declaration, which apparently is on information and belief, alleges. In fact, the trustworthiness of those allegations, it's inherently untrustworthy. Ms. Marguerite Thomas, when she appeared on the Barbara Walters show, indicated that the police had said there had been a rash of burglaries and for her husband to come outside and check. Even that is inconsistent with what's stated in this declaration, which was that the husband was told his car was burglarized. So, but like I said, I don't want to get into a factual dispute because it's not important. It's a waste of this court's time and resources, and we're talking about a subpoena on a witness. We're not talking about something that goes to the defendant's guilt or innocence directly and should consume this court's time. But, Your Honor, the only issue that the case law allows this court to decide is whether indeed this witness has relevant and material information to offer. And for the reasons set forth, we certainly believe that she does. And consequently, we ask the court to deny the motion to quash the subpoena.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Jones, do you have any brief response?
Very brief, Your Honor. Your Honor, counsel refers to some
Not
additional
brief.
hearing sometime in the future. I've been here 3 times. It was my impression this is the hearing. If they have witnesses, if they have information, if they have documents, if they have Barbara
Jimmy
Walters,
Tay.
then this is the time for it. We are asking the court to quash this subpoena. They say they need to investigate things. Well, the thirst for knowledge is admirable, but you don't do it by subpoena. It's the reverse. You do the investigation, you develop relevant and material information, and then you serve the witness with a subpoena. You cannot serve the witness with a subpoena and go fishing once she is on the stand, and I think that's ludicrous. Secondly, they talk about the weakness of our factual scenario. I would just submit it to the court that the response by this lady after this approach, knock, knock, police officers, Mrs. Thomas, may we come in, open the door, and she says, you chicken shits. That speaks volumes for what happened and where the truth lies with respect to this factual controversy. And lastly, this case that they gave me this morning says you can't assess fees after you quash the subpoena. I concede that. We're not requesting fees. We do ask the court to quash the subpoena.
All right. Thank you, counsel. All right.
I love Baby
I
Soft.
accept the argument by Mr. Jones that the court does have inherent power to quash subpoenas in the face of outrageous conduct by either party in the service of a subpoena, although I have not been able to find any case authority that directly says so, but I accept that as a given, and I would be surprised if any appellate court would overturn that particular finding. In examining the assertions in the moving papers, however, I find that factually, that the facts and circumstances in this situation do not rise to the level of outrage that would shock the conscience of the court. And so on that grounds, I decline to quash the subpoena. Then the court has to focus its attention to whether or not the witness has some relevant information with regards to this case. The fact that the witness on June the 17th did in fact have, or is alleged to have had, 2 telephone conversations with the defendant, and was, which relate both to the date of the arrest and the Rockingham residence. I find that that is a sufficient showing for the purpose of the issuance of a subpoena. So the motion to quash the subpoena is denied. All right, counsel, we had previously issued and held a body attachment for your client till today's date.
Every couple of years, I still get my mom Jeanette for Christmas or her birthday.
You want to make her available on some date in the future, and I'll hold the warrant to that, hold the body attachment to that date.
Yes, Your Honor. I would appreciate being given a date by, upon which the people intend to place Mrs. Thomas on the stand without any prior interviews.
All right, she's declining any prior interviews?
I beg your pardon?
She's going to decline to be interviewed pre-interview.
Absolutely. As a result of this treatment, she has no willingness to be interviewed by the people who were involved.
All right.
Stand out of line.
Certainly.
I would add, she lives in Orange County, so I would appreciate a realistic date when they will put her on the stand.
Your Honor,
Well,
I just wanted...
I would suggest then that we place her, give us a relatively, we'll get a date, and then we'll place her on call and make the arrangements through your office, Mr. Jones, if that's agreeable to you.
I will represent that we will cooperate and she will be here.
All right.
May I mention, Your Honor, that Ms. Thomas has been in the audience observing these proceedings quite a bit during the trial. It doesn't seem to have been a hardship for her to arrive from Orange County.
Well, as a matter, she's going to be here with her counsel as well, though, so knowing Mr. Jones's schedule as well, I'm willing to accommodate both Mr. Jones and the witness.
Tentatively for March 3rd, Your Honor.
March 3?
Mm-hmm.
All right, March 3, body attachment will be issued, continue to be held until Friday, March 3 at 9 a.m. Thank you, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, record should reflect that we've been joined by the defendant, Mr. Simpson. Ms. Clark, are you prepared to call your next witness? All right. Mr. Cochran, anything else before we ask the jury to join us?
There's one other matter, but I think we can do it later. One other matter. I do have a question, Your Honor. I'd like
Certainly.
I'd like to approach on it without recording. That's good for what?
Your Honor, I'd like to complain about Marcia's hair. Sometimes Nicole or someone in their family has curls in their hair. And Marcia is clearly wearing curls in her hair in front of the jury. Now, they may be natural and nothing she can do about them, but I think this is an abomination, and she should shave her head.
morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Clark, you may call your next witness. I'm sorry, Ms. Clark, what was the name? Eva Stein. Eva Stein, thank you. All right, Ms. Stein, would you come forward, please? Ms. Stein. All right, Ms. Stein, would you step around council table here and stand over here by our computer projector?
Will you please raise your right hand? You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last names for the record. Eva Stein.
All right, have a seat, please, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, could you spell your name, please?
Eva Stein, Evastein.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Clark.
Good morning, Ms. Stein.
Good morning.
You a little nervous?
Yes, I am.
All right. Take a deep breath. I'm going to talk to you about where you were living on the day of June the 12th, 1994.
I was living on 873 South Bundy.
And do you know where that is in relationship to 875 South Bundy?
It's just north.
Is
of
that right next
875.
door?
Yes, it's the building right next door.
And was there someone living there with you at the time?
Yes, my boyfriend,
And his name?
Lou Karp. Karpf.
To your left is Creek Ford. That's been marked as equals 26. Do you see the location I'm pointing to, the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if this purple house, excuse me. If this red house here is 875 South Bundy, what would this blue house be?
That blue house would be 873 South Bundy.
Your residence?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mel. That's so cute. You're going to have a great Valentine's Day. Hi, Idaho.
Now, your particular apartment at 873 South Bundy, did it face the street?
Yes, it was in the back of the condo unit, and it did face the street.
The street where cars drive back and forth? Or was it an alley?
Well, the bedroom the bedroom part faced the alley.
Okay. Jonathan? Can you look on your monitor next to you there? Thank you. Do you recognize the location shown there? Does that look familiar to you?
Well, it's the back alley of it's the back alley.
Now, directing your attention to the building that is on your right as you face the photograph with the lights on the balcony and a Jeep parked in the driveway.
Yes,
See what
Jen,
I'm
that's
talking
right.
about?
Well, I see a few cars parked in the driveway.
Okay, do you see one that's parked facing into the driveway?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If that was 875 South Bundy, where would your apartment have been in relation to that?
Well, it's right behind that where the lights are on.
I'm going to use a laser pointer. See that moving cross?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you move it up, Jonathan? Would your building be right there, where that moving cross is shown?
Yes.
Okay. And so, do you have an entry that opens onto the alley there?
Yes, I do.
Is that the entrance that you use for your, that you used for your apartment back in June of '94?
That is the entrance that I used, yes. That's the garage entrance.
Excuse me, sir, which exhibit is this?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, is that People's 38?
People's 38? All right, and are we going to be able to preserve that particular mark?
Yes, Your Honor. We're going to print.
All right. Then the print will designate as People's 38A.
All right, now, did you have an entry that opened onto Bundy as well?
Yes.
You printing? Okay. On the night of June the 12th, 1994, what time did you get home?
I got home later on in the afternoon.
And do you recall whether Louis Karp was home on that day?
No, he was not.
Do you know where he was?
He was visiting family in San Jose for the weekend.
And do you recall what time you went to bed that night?
I went to bed a couple of minutes before 10 o'clock.
Now, your bedroom, did your apartment have an upstairs and a downstairs?
Yes,
And where was the bedroom?
upstairs.
So when you went to bed, you went upstairs to go to bed?
Yes, I did.
Did something awaken you?
Yes,
What?
a very loud barking of dogs.
And what did you do when that loud barking woke you up?
Well, I was sleeping and I heard the dogs barking, and I tried to go back to sleep and I couldn't because the barking seemed to be very, very persistent, nonstop, and very, very loud, and it actually kept me from falling back to sleep.
Could you tell if it was one dog or two dogs?
Overruled.
When I had first awoken out of my sleep, it sounded like, a few dogs.
Okay. Could it have been one? Could you tell?
Overruled. The way it's phrased, it's compound, however.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Honor. Could you tell for sure whether it was one or more dogs?
No,
Had you ever heard barking that loud and that insistent in the neighborhood before?
not at that hour of the evening. It's a pretty quiet area, and I've never really heard, very much barking.
So the barking woke you up and you couldn't go back to sleep?
No, I couldn't go back to sleep because it just was very unusually loud. It was just like a regular bark. It just seemed very like an insistent, loud bark, and it just didn't stop. And I remember being very annoyed because I couldn't fall back to sleep.
Could you tell, or did you have a sense of where that barking was coming from? What direction?
Well, facing, the alley from my bedroom, it seemed to be coming from the left, a distance down on the left side.
Okay, so if you were facing the alley, it would be to your left?
It would be to my left.
And would that be south of you?
Yes.
Can you look at your monitor? See where the cross is?
Yes, I do.
Would
Yes.
it be from that location that you heard the barking coming?
Pleading suggested, Your Honor, said distance down the alley. Objective.
Overruled.
And your answer was it coming from that area where you see the cross?
It seemed to be coming, yes, from that area, but further down.
How about there?
Almost from the end of the alley, like from where the street starts.
It seemed to be coming from...
That mark, Your Honor,
Well,
the alley was-
excuse me, Your Honor. Could counsel allow me to question the witness?
You can do that on cross-examination if you like.
Council will have plenty of time, I'm sure. Could you, Jonathan, could you move it down farther, please? There we go. Tell us when to stop.
Yes, around that area.
All right. Could you put a circle there? All right, now, that was the general sense of the direction?
That was the general sense, yes.
So it would have been to the south of where you were?
Yes.
At some point, did Mr. Karp get home?
Yes, he did.
When he did, was the dog still barking?
Yes, it was.
And when he got home, about how long was that after the dog barking woke you up?
It was approximately half an hour after I woke up.
How could you tell when Mr. Karp got home?
I asked him what time he came home the following day.
Okay. And he told you?
11:15.
So you began to hear the dog bark at approximately 10:15?
At approximately 10:15.
Now, did you see Mr. Karp when he got home that night?
Yes,
And when you saw him, where was that, upstairs or downstairs?
downstairs.
And did you see anything in his hands?
No.
Was the dog still barking at that point?
I don't remember.
Did you ever go back to sleep?
I did go back upstairs and I tried to go back to sleep. Kind of dozed in and out. Not really, fell back to sleep.
And why's that?
I just
She's still awake today because the dog was barking.
couldn't fall back to sleep.
Was there something preventing you from falling back to sleep?
I think just because I had been already up and was woken up, and Lou had come home, my boyfriend, and I went back to bed. I guess I was kind of like waiting for him to come up, and there was no other reason I could think of.
Was there any noise outside?
I don't remember.
Do you remember hearing the police arrive?
Yes, I do.
And was that, how long was that approximately after Lewis got home?
Well, Lewis stayed downstairs for a while and came up, close to midnight. And then sometime after midnight, I don't remember the exact time, is when I heard the police come and all the commotion in the alley, just from the police cars.
So it was sometime around midnight, after midnight?
After midnight.
Bye, Mal.
And did you and Lewis have a conversation about a dog that he saw that night?
No.
Was it after that? Did he at some point tell you about a dog he saw that night?
Yes, the next day after we had found out what happened.
When did he tell you?
Here's so you're sustained.
As of June the 12th, 1994, how long had you been living there?
Approximately a year.
And had you ever heard dog barking like that before?
Not in that intense way, no. I mean, I've heard dogs barking in the neighborhood, but not as intense as I heard it that evening, and non-stop like that.
Thank you, Ms. Stein.
Mr. Cochran?
Morning, Ms. Stein.
Good morning.
I'd like to ask you just a few questions, if I might. You lived at a house just north of the 875 South Bundy residence at 873, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
And as I understand your testimony, Ms. Stein, the bedroom window of your residence faces west, kind of looking over this alley we see depicted on People's 38, I guess. Is that correct?
Yes, the bedroom faces over the alley.
And you recall talking with the police in connection with what you'd observed on June 12, 1994, back on 11/9/94? Recall talking to the police officers?
I recall talking
To some police officers about what you'd observed?
at my work. They
Yes.
came to my work.
In fact, you talked with the investigating officers in this case, Detectives Lang and Van Adder, isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And they came to your place of work in the city of Vernon,
Yes,
and they spoke to you, is that correct?
yes,
And when you spoke to the officers, you, of course, tried to be as accurate as you could, is that correct?
yes,
And you told them what you recalled, is that correct?
yes,
And would I be correct in assuming that in November of 1994, the events were fresher in your mind at that time for things that had happened in June than they are now? Is that a fair statement?
I assume so.
All right. Now, when talking to Detectives Lang and Van Adder, you told them, did you not, that you went to sleep between 9:45 and about 10 o'clock, or strike that? That you got into bed by 9:45, between that and 10 o'clock. Is that correct?
I don't recall saying I got into bed between 9:45 and 10 o'clock.
All right, well-
I recall saying that I went to sleep at approximately 10 o'clock.
All right. Well, let me, if I might approach Your Honor, I'd like to show you, referring to page 1371. I'm just going to ask you just to review Sir Force's report, if I might refresh your recollection. Will you read this first part to yourself? Won't you read from here to here? Just read that part. Thank you. You read that now?
Yes.
Okay. And does that tend to refresh your recollection that you indicated to the police that you retired to the upstairs bedroom and went to sleep between 10:45 and 10 o'clock p.m. on June 12th?
It does not refresh my memory about the exact words that I used,
All right. Does that refresh your recollection?
of the exact words that I used.
Okay. But,
Speak for yourself when you said between 10:45 and 10 o'clock.
I'm sorry, I perhaps did, Your Honor. I intended to say between 9:45, thank you, Your Honor, and 10 o'clock p.m. on June 12th. Does that refresh your recollection at all?
I remember saying that I went to sleep approximately 10 o'clock. I don't remember the exact words that I used.
Okay, so about 10 o'clock would be accurate.
Yes.
Okay. And when you went to sleep, you didn't hear any dogs barking at that point, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, did you then tell the police officers that sometime between 10:15 p.m. and 10:45 p.m., you were awakened by what you described as, quote, intense barking by a, quote, a few dogs?
Yes.
All right, and that's what you told them, isn't it?
Yes.
So sometime between 10:15 and 10:45, you're awakened by this intense barking by a few dogs, right?
Yes.
All right? And you went on to tell the police, did you not, that you had never heard this much barking of dogs in the neighborhood before that particular night.
That's correct.
Is that correct? All right. That after you were awakened, your fiancé, Mr. Karp, returned to the residence approximately 30 to 45 minutes after you were awakened by these barking dogs.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. He came upstairs and changed, and they went to bed ultimately. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Now, at any time that evening, did you hear any screams or any sounds anywhere in that
No.
area? You never heard any screams or any sounds or anything?
No.
And these dogs that you heard barking, it's your best recollection, the sound of these dogs barking came somewhere south of your location, near the intersection of Dorothy and Bundy. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And, have a second here. Sure.
Hey, Ariel.
And the area here, you can see that on your monitor, can you? Where that circle is, that is where the general area where you believe that there was these barking dogs. Is that correct?
Yes, the general area.
And if you can tell from that location, if you can tell, is Dorothy somewhere right around in this area? Is that near the end of the street?
Yes,
All right, and that's about the location as you understood it.
yes.
Now, when you heard these barking dogs, the intensely barking dogs, you never got up and looked out the window, is that
No, I
correct?
did not.
And you never saw any of these dogs? did
No.
you? All right. And you have heard dogs barking in that neighborhood before, but not to this intensity, is that correct?
Right.
All right. Do you know about what time it was that you became aware there was some activity in the alleyway behind your residence? You know what time it was?
I mean, as far as the police getting
Yes,
there?
as far as the police.
I don't know the exact time.
All right.
I know that it was after midnight, but I do not know the exact time.
Sometime after midnight, is that correct? Did you get up and go look outside?
Yes, I did.
All right. You saw police cars out there?
I saw a police car downstairs, right?
All right. Did you see any other cars other than the police car?
No, just the police cars.
And you didn't
Actually,
talk?
one police car.
One police car. And you didn't talk to the police that night, did you?
No,
Did they come and try to talk with you the next morning at all?
no,
So it wasn't until November that you spoke to the police, is that right?
right.
And that's when Lang and Van Adder came out to talk to you at your place of business, is that
That's
right?
right.
As best you can tell, Mr. Karp came home from this trip to San Jose sometime between 10:50 p.m. and 11 o'clock p.m., isn't that correct?
I asked Mr. Karp what time he got home after we found out about the incident,
Yes, ma'am.
and he said that he came home
Objection,
about quarter
hearsay.
to 11, is what he told me.
All right, so about 10:45 is your best thought.
Yes, according to what he told me.
And that was during the time that you'd been sleeping, is that correct?
Objection, you state the testimony.
Well, I'm asking. I'm just stating the testimony.
Overruled.
Had you been
Well, by the
asleep?
time he came home, I was already awake.
All right, so if you slept between 10:15 and 10:45 and were awakened by the barking dogs at 10:45, right? You're already awake, right?
I was awake when he
All right.
got home.
And have you seen his statement to the police about what time he arrived home?
No,
But it's your recollection that you were awake by the time he actually got in.
I was definitely awake by the time he was home. I had been awake for some time.
How long?
It seemed approximately a half an hour.
So could he have gotten home later? Perhaps 11:15?
I don't think so.
You didn't look at a clock, however.
The only time I looked at a clock is right before I went to sleep.
And that was at what time?
That was a few minutes before 10 o'clock.
All right. And that was the only time you looked at the
That was the only time.
clock? Okay. Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark, do you have any redirect?
So your most accurate statement of time is that you were awake for half an hour by the time Lewis came home.
Yes, approximately half an hour.
Felt like that.
It felt like that.
And you feel certain of that?
It just felt like about a half an hour.
And when he came home, that was half an hour after you heard the dog start barking.
Yes,
And then you learned that he came home at 10:45 approximately.
yes.
Overruled. Recross.
I have been privileged to
All right.
Ma'am, thank you very much for coming in. Please don't discuss your testimony with any other person until after
That
the
was
case is over.
super
However, you may
easy.
discuss it further with the attorneys. All right? Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Clark, let me ask you a quick question. On the two hard copy printouts of the items that were circled, do you have one or two? We have two? All right, the 38A will be the cross by the, up by the windows, I believe. And then 38B will be the circle down by the end of the alley.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Bailey, you have a comment on that?
Well, Your Honor, I think there'll be quite a volume of these. I suggest
Well, that was almost perfect timing. Almost 2 hours to the dot. If I would have just not paused it one time, we would have been on 2 hours. Guys, thank you so much for coming out to OJ. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great, great, great Valentine's Day. If you're not having a great Valentine's Day, come into Discord and talk to everybody. Then you will have a great Valentine's Day. Don't forget to set your clocks for Monday. Monday, right after Judge Fleischer's docket is over, we're going to do a special live, and it's really good. All right? Thanks for coming out, guys. Happy Valentine's Day. See ya.